Hey cuz, this is your tutorial on making a lovely, beautiful braided chevron bracelet as requested. So this is one that I actually just made a little bit ago, kind of practicing to make sure I could still do it. It's been a few years and I mean it turned out pretty okay. Cool. So the first thing to note is I have my embroidery floss here. If you look at the different colors, I actually have 7 different options here, right? I've got 7 different colors. Ultimately, what's important about this is that you can do this with any odd number, effectively. You could do it with 3 if you want to. Typically, 5 or 7 is just about right. I have done it with 9, but it involves a lot of kind of shifting over. It's a little bit more time intensive. Theoretically, if you wanted to go 11 or more, you could. You just kind of run out of fingers and you need to make some sort of jig or something to help yourself out. You'll also notice that this length is about from the fingertips to about the chest, right? So fingertips, I did the middle of the chest. This one will probably be longer. As long as it's at least arm's length, it should be good. Usually I shoot somewhere in the middle. And our very first step that we're going to go with this is getting it all smoothed out. And this is very important, making sure that you create kind of a giant circle. We're going to tie the 2 ends together, making sure that all of this, where it meets the tie, is nice and even. And you'll notice on this end, I do have a little disparity here, and that's okay. If I wanted to, I could cut it off. For now, I'm just going to leave it on. But right now, I'm going to kind of match it all up to that shortest end and just do a simple knot right here. And in fact, at this point, I actually kind of like having at least one little bit just a hair longer. Because now with this, what I can do, and I think I'll use the blue here, but I actually have this little paper clip down here, and I'm going to hook everything up to, if we can see it. But if I make a little loop with that, it'll actually allow us to just hook that part onto the paper clip. It'll make our lives a little bit easier here. But I'm going to loop this on here. But it goes very quickly. There are some pros and cons that you don't get quite as intricate of a pattern as some other ideas. But I still think it looks cool, and for how quickly it goes, and I also just really like the pattern. The knots to me are very time consuming. So you'll notice I have 7 here. What I'm going to do, and if you really want to, you can kind of plan things out in a specific order. I'm just going to kind of go randomly here. But I'm going to split it between 4 and 3. And because there are 4, I'm going to start with my pinky here. If I do this with a 7-string pinky, if I were doing this with a 5-string, I'd start with my ring finger. But I'm just going to loop one string around each of them. And it will get a little bit messy at the bottom, and that's okay. And then on the other side, we're going to do the same. Just hook one around each finger. And again, at this point, it's going to look a little messy at the bottom. I'm not too worried about it. So ultimately, we have this, right? We have these 4 fingers, each with one on. And it doesn't matter right or left. It's going to be flipping back and forth anyway. And these 3 fingers, and we have 1 working finger. Thumbs, not important here. But we do have 1 working finger free here. And what I'm going to do with this 1 working finger is I'm going to start weaving it through the rest of the floss here. And I'm going to start by going over. If you go under, it gets a little bit weird, so always start with over with the very first, and then under the same color on the other side. So the innermost, you go over, under, over, under, over, under, and then the very last one, like not the last one, but the first of the final color, this orange here, I'm just going to hook. If you want to, you can pinch. Usually to start it off with, it's easier to pinch, but I'm going to hook. I'm going to pull it all the way through, and then pull it tight down to the bottom. Okay, and you'll notice now I basically have the same setup, only flip. This side has 4, this side has 3. Well, I want this pointer finger as kind of my working finger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully move the strings 1 finger to the next. So I brought the pinky up to take from the ring to take from the middle to take from the pointer, and now my pointer is free. And I do the same thing. I'm going to go over the innermost of the orange, under the outer, over the inner green, under the outer, then yellow, and then finally this red one, the very innermost red, I'm just going to pinch. Or else drag. Pinch and drag through. Once you get good at it, I just have to hook. I don't really have to pinch. And in fact, weirdly enough, like one hand works pretty well to just hook. The other one I usually need to pinch. And then I do the same thing. And I actually kind of off screen there just flipped over that just instinctively, but do the same thing. Over, under, over, under, over, under. And then the blue I'm going to hook and pull it through. And then separate out to the end. And then, yeah, I just brought it back. I'm going to do the same thing. Over, under, hook, and pull through. Working finger free again. And then basically you just do that same process over and over again. It goes fairly quickly. Like already I've probably got a ½ inch down, and I've been taking the time to show this. So what I think I will do here is pause and give you a moment. One thing I do want to point out is as you do go through this, a lot of other, especially like the knot style bracelets, like you can more or less stop whenever you want and pick it back up right where you left off. It's really hard to do that. You have to be incredibly intentional about not just in the order that you left it if you do ever stop, but also the orientation, which kind of direction they were flipped. Otherwise it will show up in the end pattern. That being said, usually this only takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes tops to fully finish. So usually that's not an issue of having to stop and do it. Sometimes I'm very careful and I just kind of very gently set them all down just like so I know exactly how my fingers need to go to bring it back. Okay, so we'll pause and I'll kind of bring you back in once we get to the end of this. Okay, just doing a kind of a check-in here now that we're a little bit closer and you can probably see a little bit easier or more easily. By this point in time it does get a bit quicker. I also do have a slight correction that I wanted to make from earlier, and that being said, this one being 7 does take a little bit longer. I probably put in close to 20 minutes on this, but it's still fairly short overall. One thing you also might notice me doing is I kind of give each of my fingers a little bit of a twist. And that almost makes it so you don't really have to weave. You can almost just stick your fingers through and then hook and pull. It's a little bit easier to do when it's slightly longer than this, but it does save just a hair amount of time off. Okay, so I think I am hitting my last one here. I pulled through it. It's getting kind of tight to squeeze through. I guess maybe I could try one more. But basically go until you feel comfortable. All you're really doing from this point on is making it smaller loops. And honestly at this point all I'm going to do is I'm going to start looping them all onto one finger. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm basically kind of starting with my ring finger and going through all of them. So that way we have just this nice flat loop here, okay? And basically what this will be is this will be where we tie off. If you want to, I usually like to go ahead. A lot of people like the smoothness of the transition. It will loosen up over time a little bit, those chevrons right there. And I like to actually go ahead and just do a simple knot here as well, but you really don't have to. A lot of people don't. I'm just weird. Okay, so leave at least a bit of a knot here, or a little bit of a loop there. And then what I can do down here is I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. Ooh. Ta-da! Anyways, basically to put it on, this is a lot easier to do with a second person, but you just kind of feed this through here, through the loop. You'll bring it back and you can usually typically tie it off right here. That will end up giving this, naturally putting it on someone's wrist. This one I actually did a little bit bigger, so I can actually slide it on and off as I will. So I might tie it, I might slide it on, tighten it up, and then tie it off. Whatever the case, it definitely works much better with a second person to give assistance. And that is effectively your final product. Ta-da!